They mocked the quiet new nurse until a Navy helicopter landed demanding their SEAL Combat Pro. The first thing they noticed about her was how little space she seemed to take. She stood at the edge of the trauma bay during morning turnover, hands folded behind her back, eyes steady, expression unreadable. No chatter, no nervous jokes, no trying to impress, just a calm stillness that felt out of place. Someone near the supply lockers whispered, "Is she scared or just dumb?" A couple of snickers followed. Her name was Petty Officer Second Class Mara Kincaid, Navy Nurse Corps, newly assigned to Fort Blackwell Joint Medical Facility, a sealed installation tucked into scrub desert and red dust. Officially, it was a training support base. Unofficially, it was where things went when they didn't fit anywhere else. Delta transfers, black tag simulations, night arrivals with no paperwork, and Mara Kincaid said almost nothing. She was 28. Slight. Hair pulled back regulation tight. No visible tattoos, no combat swagger. Her file said medical surgical nurse, prior enlisted, no medals worth talking about. That alone made her a target. "Hey, new girl," Lieutenant Hargreave said loudly, not even looking at her. "Hope you like blood. This place eats nurses alive." Mara nodded once. "Yes, sir." That was it. No smile, no flinch. Someone muttered, "Creepy." By week 2, the jokes had names. Mute mouse, ghost, shrink wrap. She took the worst shifts without complaint. Night trauma, overflow bay. Cleanup after live tissue drills that made seasoned medics dry heave. When patients screamed, she didn't rush, she anchored them. When others panicked, she slowed the room down with her voice. Soft, controlled, precise, and somehow, things stabilized around her. But that didn't stop the mocking. Because in military culture, silence gets mistaken for weakness. Fort Blackwell didn't sleep. It just dimmed. At night, floodlights washed the perimeter in white glare while helicopters passed overhead like restless insects. Inside the medical wing, the air smelled of antiseptic and burned coffee. Monitors beeped in patterns everyone pretended not to hear anymore. Politics ran thick. Army surgeons outranked Navy nurses. Contractors outranked everyone. And the unspoken rule was simple. Don't ask questions about where patients come from, especially the ones with no names. Mara never asked. She charted, she treated, she followed orders, but not blindly. She double-checked meds. She caught subtle tremors in patients others called stable. She corrected junior doctors quietly, without ego. That made enemies. Who does she think she is? Captain Lowell scoffed one night. She's a nurse, not a tactician. Mara heard it. She kept walking, because she'd learned a long time ago, survival doesn't always look loud. The first time Mara learned to disappear, she was 19 and standing on a flight deck in the Indian Ocean. Blood slicked the non-skid. Smoke rolled low. Someone was screaming in Pashto. Someone else wasn't screaming at all. She'd been a combat medic candidate, embedded for cross-training, not supposed to be there when things went sideways. But the bird went down anyway. She remembered kneeling in fire, hands steady while her heart tried to break out of her ribs. Remembered clamping an artery while rounds snapped overhead. Remembered thinking, with strange calm, if I panic, they die. That thought never left her. She never talked about that day. Her record didn't either. By the third week, the bullying sharpened. During a late-night lull, someone taped a printed meme to her locker, a mouse in scrubs. Caption, "Squeak if you're useful." Mara took it down, folded it neatly, and threw it away. No report. That bothered them more than anger ever could. Lieutenant Hargreave watched her from across the ward, unease creeping in. He couldn't explain it, but something about her composure felt trained, not nurse-trained, combat-trained. It happened at 0217. The alarms didn't scream. They chimed, 3 short pulses. Incoming emergency, unscheduled. Air traffic control called it in with clipped words. Unmarked Navy rotary inbound. No transponder. Hot fuel. Requesting immediate medical asset on landing. The room went still. No transponder? Someone said. That's not protocol. Then the sound hit them. A low, aggressive thrum that vibrated through the walls. Rotor wash. Mara was already moving. She grabbed a trauma pack without being told, snapped on gloves, checked airway kits. Her eyes weren't wide. They were sharp. Outside, the night split open. A Navy helicopter, matte black, nose scarred, came down hard on the landing pad. Dust and debris blasted outward. The side door slid open before the skids fully touched. A man jumped out. No rank visible, beard heavy, eyes feral with urgency. He didn't look at the officers. He scanned the line of medics, and then he said the words that froze the base. "We need our SEAL Combat Pro. Now." Confusion rippled. "SEAL?" Captain Lowell barked. "This is a medical facility." The man cut him off, voice like gravel. "Don't care what this place is. She's assigned here. Quiet, Navy nurse, last name Kincaid." Every eye turned. Mara stepped forward. "Yes." The man exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for miles. "Thank God." Silence crashed down. Lieutenant Hargreave felt his stomach drop. "Wait," Lowell stammered. "She's just a—" The man leaned in, close enough that Lowell could smell jet fuel and blood. "She's the reason 3 of my guys are still breathing." Then he turned to Mara. "We've got one critical. GSW, chest and femoral. 40 seconds out from coding. Bird can't lift again without you." Mara nodded once. "Show me." As she moved toward the helicopter, the base, the mocking, the hierarchy, the assumptions, cracked wide open, and nobody laughed anymore. The helicopter never fully shut down. The rotors stayed hot, chopping the night into violent pieces as Mara climbed inside. The interior lights were dim red, combat lighting, washing everything in the color of exposed muscle and warning. 3 men were strapped to the floor, 2 conscious, 1 not. The unconscious one was bleeding out. Gunshot wound through the lower right chest. Exit through the back. Femoral hit from shrapnel or secondary fragmentation. His flight suit was dark and wet, blood pooling despite pressure dressings already soaked through. A SEAL knelt over him, hands shaking as he tried to maintain compression. "He's fading," he said. "Pulse is thready. We've dumped 2 units already." Mara dropped beside them without hesitation. "Time of injury? 8 minutes ago. Mechanism, ambush. Close range." She didn't react to the word ambush. She didn't ask for names. She slid her fingers into the blood at the groin, found the bleed by feel alone. "Tourniquet's too high," she said calmly. "He's bleeding from a branch. I need space." One of the operators started to protest. The team leader cut him off. "Give it." Mara repositioned the tourniquet lower, tighter. The bleeding slowed, not stopped. She looked up. "I need a chest seal and a decompression needle. Now." The medic handed it to her without question. Inside the bird, the noise was overwhelming. Rotors screaming, radios squawking, men breathing hard through clenched teeth. But Mara's voice cut through it like a metronome. "Breathe for me," she said to the wounded man, though he couldn't hear her. "Stay with me." She punctured the chest cleanly, controlled, no wasted motion. Air hissed out, trapped pressure releasing. The man spasmed, then settled. His pulse strengthened. One of the SEALs stared. "How the hell did you—" Mara didn't look up. "Keep pressure," she said. "He's not stable yet." This wasn't textbook medicine. This was battlefield judgment, the kind you only learn when lives end if you hesitate. From the control tower, Captain Lowell watched the helicopter stay grounded far longer than expected. "Why aren't they lifting?" he snapped. The tower operator swallowed. "Sir, they're waiting." "For what?" The operator checked the screen again. "For her." Lowell clenched his jaw. Something was very wrong with the story he thought he knew. Mara worked fast, but never rushed. She secured the airway, reassessed vitals, adjusted the tourniquet again when the bleeding tried to surge. Her hands were steady, not just practiced, but familiar with chaos. One of the conscious SEALs finally spoke. "You've done this before." Mara met his eyes for the first time. "Yes." "Where?" She paused just long enough to be honest. "Places that don't show up on maps." No one asked another question. They lifted off with her still kneeling, one hand braced against the floor, the other on the patient's chest, feeling every breath, every beat. When the helicopter touched back down at Fort Blackwell's trauma pad, the patient was alive, barely, but alive. This time, no one laughed when Mara pushed through the doors. Doctors scrambled. Orders flew. Blood was called for. A thoracic surgeon appeared, half-dressed, eyes sharp with urgency. "Who stabilized him?" The SEAL team leader answered before anyone else could. "She did." The surgeon glanced at Mara, then back at the monitors. "Good work," he said. "You bought us time." Time. That was the most valuable currency in war. Mara stepped back as the surgical team took over. Her gloves were soaked. Her uniform was stained dark red to the elbows. Only then did her hands begin to shake. She tucked them behind her back, breathing slow, grounding herself. Lieutenant Hargreave watched from the doorway, his earlier mockery echoing in his skull. Is she scared or just dumb? Neither. She was disciplined. An hour later, as the patient was wheeled into surgery, a Navy intelligence officer arrived unannounced. He didn't ask permission. He went straight to admin. "I need Petty Officer Kincaid's full service record," he said. The clerk hesitated. "Sir, her file is redacted." The officer's expression didn't change. "Unredact it." Minutes later, he stared at the screen. Then he exhaled. Jesus. By dawn, rumors had spread, not loud ones, dangerous ones. Whispers that the quiet nurse wasn't just a nurse, that she'd been embedded with special operations medical units, that she'd been pulled out after something went wrong, or right, depending on who told the story, that she carried qualifications no one here had clearance to see. Captain Lowell stormed down the corridor, fury barely contained. He stopped Mara outside the supply room. "You want to explain why a SEAL team thinks you belong to them?" Mara met his gaze. "I belong to the Navy," she said evenly. "Same as you. That's not an answer." She held his eyes. "It's the only one I'm allowed to give." For the first time since her arrival, Lowell had no response. "A line has been crossed." That morning, Fort Blackwell received an encrypted message. Not medical, operational, signed by a unit that didn't request things. It demanded them, and suddenly, the jokes felt dangerous. Because mocking a quiet nurse was one thing. Mocking someone the Navy still called an asset was another, and the base was about to learn the difference. Morning came to Fort Blackwell the way it always did. Slow, pale, and unforgiving. The desert didn't care about rumors, but the base did. Mara Kincaid felt it the moment she stepped into the corridor. The looks that lasted a second too long, the conversations that died mid-sentence, the careful distance people suddenly kept. Respect, fear, suspicion, sometimes all three look the same in uniform. She kept her posture neutral, hands clasped behind her back, eyes forward, breathing steady, the same way she'd learned to stand when waiting for extraction that might not come. The office with no windows at Aero 900, she was summoned, not by her chain of command, by a door that didn't exist on most maps. Two Marines stood outside it, faces blank. One knocked once, then opened it without waiting. Inside, the air was cool and still. Three people sat at a steel table, a Navy captain in dress utilities, a civilian in a gray suit with no insignia, and the intelligence officer from the night before, Mara Kincaid, the captain said. At ease, she remained standing. "Yes, sir." The civilian studied her like a problem that refused to be solved. "You know why you're here?" he said. Mara considered lying. She didn't. "Because I stabilized an operator you didn't expect to need me for," she said. "And because someone's afraid of what that implies." The captain's eyebrow lifted. "Careful." "Respectfully, sir," Mara replied, voice calm but firm. "Careful stopped being an option a long time ago." Silence stretched. Then the intelligence officer slid a tablet across the table. The civilian leaned back. "You were never supposed to end up here." "No," Mara said. "I wasn't." The civilian tapped the tablet. "Tell us about Kandahar." Mara's jaw tightened. "Just barely. That mission is classified. So is this room." She closed her eyes for half a breath. Then she spoke. 4 years ago, I was attached to a joint task unit as a medical asset, she said. We were supporting a high-value capture. Intel was bad. We walked into a compound that was already compromised. Her voice didn't shake. They hit us with small arms and an IED. 2 operators went down immediately. 1 officer froze, wouldn't move, wouldn't give the order to withdraw. The captain shifted. "What did you do?" "I dragged the wounded behind cover. I treated one. The other didn't make it." A pause. The officer finally ordered exfil. Too late. On the way out, he ordered us to leave a local interpreter behind. He was wounded, but alive. The room went still. Mara looked straight at the civilian. I refused. The captain's voice was tight. "You disobeyed a direct order?" "Yes, sir." "What happened?" "I carried the interpreter myself. Under fire." The officer reported me for insubordination. The intelligence officer added quietly, "That officer was the son of a flag-ranked official." Mara nodded. "My career ended that night. Officially." The civilian leaned forward. "You were offered a deal," he said. "Quiet reassignment. No promotion track. No special duties. In exchange for silence. Yes, and you took it." "I took it because the interpreter lived," Mara said, "and because the men who didn't freeze deserved someone still standing." No one spoke. The captain finally exhaled. "You should have been decorated." Mara's eyes flicked up. "Instead, I was erased." By midday, the story had leaked. Not the details, but the shape of it. People stopped calling her the quiet nurse. They started calling her ma'am, even when they outranked her. Lieutenant Hargreaves stood by the vending machines, watching Mara walk past. He cleared his throat. "Petty Officer Kincaid." She stopped. "I owe you an apology," he said, stiff, uncomfortable. "I misjudged you." Mara studied him for a moment. "Most people do," she said. Then she added gently, "It's easier than listening." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." That evening, the civilian found her alone in the supply bay. "They want you back," he said. "Special operations, full status. Your silence ends, but so does your protection." Mara set down the inventory tablet, and the officer from Kandahar, still wearing rank, she nodded slowly. "Then my answer's no." The civilian frowned. "You'd stay here? Let them bury you again?" Mara met his eyes. "No," she said. "I'll stay, and I won't be quiet anymore." That night, the SEAL team returned, not for medical support, for her. They stood outside the ward, 6 of them, eyes hard, posture respectful. Their leader spoke softly. "We heard what you did, back then, and now." Mara waited. "We don't forget our own." She felt something loosen in her chest, not relief, but resolve. The base lights hummed overhead, and somewhere above the desert, helicopters warmed up, because silence had protected lies for too long, and Mara Kincaid was done carrying them alone. Fort Blackwell changed its tone overnight, not officially, not on paper, but doors closed faster. Calls went unanswered, schedules shifted without explanation, and Mara Kincaid found herself reassigned from trauma to inventory review. A quiet exile dressed up as temporary administrative support. It was punishment without fingerprints. She understood that immediately. She also understood something else. They were afraid she wouldn't stay silent anymore. Captain Lowell didn't look at her when he handed over the reassignment order. "Temporary," he said. Just until things settle, Mara read the paper carefully. No end date, no justification. "Sir," she said calmly, "with respect, I'm the only night shift trauma nurse certified for prolonged field care." Lowell finally met her eyes. "And now your inventory." There it was. Not anger, not hatred. Fear. Mara nodded once. "Yes, sir?" She took the paper and walked out. Behind her, Lowell exhaled hard, like someone who'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. The SEAL team didn't deploy. They lingered, unofficially awaiting tasking, officially invisible. They trained at night, ran drills near the perimeter, drank bad coffee in the shadows of the hangar, and they watched. One evening, the team leader caught Mara alone in the supply cage. "They're sidelining you," he said. "Yes." "You okay with that?" Mara finished counting morphine vials before answering. "I've been sidelined before," she said. "This time, I know why." He studied her. "They'll try to break you quietly." She met his gaze. "They'll fail quietly, too." 3 nights later at 311, everything unraveled. A live-fire night exercise went wrong. Not a drill wrong, a catastrophic wrong. An armored vehicle rolled during maneuver training. Fuel ignited. Shrapnel tore through 2 soldiers who were too close to the blast radius. Panic erupted. Medics called it in. Sirens screamed. Trauma alarms sounded across the medical wing. And then someone realized something that froze the room. The night trauma nurse wasn't on the floor. She was in inventory. Captain Lowell cursed under his breath. "Get Kincaid. Now." Mara was already moving. She'd heard the alarms. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She walked with purpose, pulling gloves on as she went, mind already triaging injuries she hadn't seen yet. When she entered the trauma bay, chaos ruled. Blood on the floor, a soldier screaming incoherently, another silent, too silent. A junior doctor stood frozen, hands hovering uselessly. Mara stepped in front of him. "Move," she said. Not loud, but absolute. He moved, she assessed in seconds. Burns, shrapnel, chest seal, she ordered. Now, tourniquet high and tight. Call thoracic. Someone hesitated. She looked at them. Now. They obeyed. Captain Lowell watched from the doorway as the room reorganized itself around her like iron filings snapping to a magnet. This wasn't rebellion. This was competence. As surgeons took over, the SEAL team leader appeared beside Lowell. "You see it now," he said quietly. Lowell didn't answer. "You buried her because someone with stars on his shoulder was embarrassed," the SEAL continued. "That won't hold." Lowell's voice cracked. "You don't understand the pressure." The SEAL cut him off. "No, you don't understand consequence." The next morning, a formal complaint landed on the desk of Naval Oversight, not anonymous. Signed, attached, time-stamped medical logs, eyewitness statements, witness. Operational inconsistencies from Kandahar, and one sealed video file. The interpreter, alive, giving testimony. The system that thrived on silence finally faced sound. By evening, 2 officers were quietly relieved of duty. Captain Lowell wasn't one of them. Yet. He stood outside the ward as Mara finished charting. "You could have walked away," he said. "Yes, you could have taken the deal." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Mara capped her pen. "Because someone else will be quiet next time," she said. "And they won't survive it." Lowell nodded slowly. For the first time, he saluted her. Not because he had to, because he finally understood. At sunset, the same black helicopter returned. This time, it shut down. An admiral stepped out. He looked at Mara. "You carried the right people," he said simply. She met his gaze. "I carried who I could." He nodded. "That's why we're here." The helicopter didn't bring fanfare. No press. No flags. Just an admiral, 2 aides, and a folder thick enough to end careers. They walked through Fort Blackwell as the sun sank low, turning the concrete gold. People stopped what they were doing, not out of fear, but instinct. This was the kind of presence that rearranged gravity. Mara Kincaid waited in the small conference room near the trauma wing, hands behind her back, posture relaxed but ready. The admiral studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You never asked for recognition," he said. "No, sir. You never defended yourself publicly." "No, sir. Why now?" Mara didn't answer immediately. "Because silence stopped protecting the right people," she said, "and started protecting the wrong ones." The admiral nodded once. That was all the explanation he needed. The folder opened. The Kandahar officer was officially relieved within the week. Not publicly, not ceremoniously, but permanently. The report didn't call Mara a hero. It called her correct. Sometimes that's harder to argue with. Captain Lowell was reassigned. Not as punishment, but as a lesson. A leadership review followed. Quiet reforms were issued. The kind that didn't make headlines but saved lives years later. Before he left, Lowell found Mara one last time. "I was wrong," he said. "Yes," she replied. "I'm sorry." She held his gaze. "I know." The admiral slid a new set of orders across the table. Full reinstatement. Special Operations Medical Command. Promotion track restored. Mara read them carefully. Then she pushed them back. "I'd like to stay," she said. The admiral looked surprised. "This place needs nurses who don't disappear," she continued, "and soldiers who know someone's watching even when it's inconvenient." The admiral smiled, just a little. "You'll make enemies. I already have," Mara said. "They just don't laugh anymore." Weeks passed. Fort Blackwell didn't become perfect, but it became better. New nurses watched Mara closely, not because she spoke much, but because when she did, it mattered. Junior doctors learned to listen. Medics learned that calm could be louder than shouting. The SEAL team deployed again. Before they left, their leader stopped by the ward. "You ever change your mind?" he said. "We'll make room." Mara nodded. "Stay safe." He hesitated. "Because of you," he said, "someone else will." Late one night, Mara walked the perimeter alone. The desert was quiet. Stars burned clean and sharp overhead. A helicopter passed in the distance. Not for her this time. She thought of the interpreter, the fallen operator, the people who never got the chance to speak. She carried them all, not as weight, but as purpose. They mocked the quiet new nurse because silence made them comfortable, until it didn't. until a helicopter landed and demanded the truth they'd tried to bury. Courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up early, stays late, and does the job no one wants. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't raise its voice. It changes the room. Never confuse silence with weakness. Some of the strongest people are just waiting for the moment their voice will save a life.